Welcome. This is a soft stemmed spring jonquil tutorial. I've created this as I'd like to use it as a bookmark, so I've kept the stem quite thin. The materials that I'll be using is wool roving, batting, warm water, bubble wrap, soap, non-slip rubber mat, some mesh, so this is fine mesh that lets the water and soap through without moving the fibres, and a towel. The beauty of this piece is that you need very little wool roving to create each jonquil. So I'm just pulling off a tuft of the green roving and splitting it into 3. So each of these 3 pieces will be 1 stem each. I'm just going to place a couple to the side and I'll show you how I work on the first one. So by giving it a rub in my hands, I'm just encouraging those fibres together before I start to dip it into the water and use some soap to penetrate into those fibres. So I use quite warm water, as hot as I can touch, and because this is a very small amount of wool, I can just rub the soap in my hands, and that in itself will help that wool and soap through the fibres. Just moving my fingers along the length of the roving just to make sure that the water and soap is all the way through. Once I've placed that to the side, I'm going to lay it down flat and I'm just going to give it a rub with my hands. I'll place the mesh over the top to protect the fibres, and I'm just going through a series of rubbing, rolling, rubbing again. You can use whatever material you prefer. You could roll it in the mesh, you can roll it in the bubble wrap, you could rub it in the non-slip rubber mat. So it's very much a trial and error. See what works for you and what feels right under your hands. So I've chosen to use the non-slip mat to roll it in. It's nice and fine, I can get a good grip, and I'm giving it a nice gentle even roll. Before I work it too much, I'm going to unroll it and I'm going to fray the end. So pull apart the end fibres, because I will use this end later to help join it to my jonquil flower bud. So I'm using a combination of rolling in my hand, and then once again I will place it down on the mat. As I work through this process, I'm going to re-dip it into the hot water, add some more soap, and keep agitating it. So it's that combination of rolling and rubbing and agitating with hot soapy water or warm soapy water that binds the wool fibres together. Now that that's semi-felted, I'll come back to it. I'm just going to pop it to the side and I'm going to start to use my light yellow roving. So once again, you find the end and gently pulling off sections. Try and keep it nice and flat. I keep my hands about 15 centimetres apart, and I'm going to create a crisscross section, and this allows the wool barbs to attach to each other more easily rather than the fibres all going in the one direction. So as you can see, I've, like an X, crisscrossed in one way and then in the other. You can also do it vertically and horizontally. I've done about 3 layers, so 3 to 4 layers would work well. I'm trying to keep a thin layer for the petals. So once I've done that, I'm placing down again the mesh, hot water, and rubbing soap across the top of the mesh surface. And I'm gently just pushing down to make sure all the water has gone through to all the fibres. I'm not using a sprinkler or a spray bottle for this, as it's such a small piece. Dripping the water off my fingertips is quite adequate. I've sped up this section, but I'm giving it a gentle rub. I pan back out, you can see that the fibres are beginning to attach, still quite fragile, so I gently flick it over and I'm going to rub it again on this side. Placing it under the mesh still protects the fibres so that my hands aren't shifting the fibres too much. If at any stage you feel that there's too much soap or too much water on your surface or in the fibres, just get a spare towel, wipe your hands off, You can pat down your mesh. I'm using a piece of dowel to roll this, so I'm rolling it all up and keeping the mesh nice and flat, pushing the mesh away as I roll it up. Some people use a sushi mat for this process. It's a very small piece of fibre, so I'm just using a piece of dowel. That works quite well for me. And I'm rolling it once again. You'll find that it gradually gets looser, so you need to unwind it, re-roll it, roll it again, and at the same time you're continuing to flip it over. You're also changing the direction of where you roll, so horizontally, vertically. In addition to the direction, you're also flipping it over. So this time I'm just using the rubber mat. You can use the bubble wrap. You can use the rubber mat. You can just use the mesh, but I find the bubble wrap and the non-slip mat gives a bit of resistance and a little bit of pressure and gentle massaging, and that helps the fibres bind. I'm checking too with a pinch test. If I pinch the fibres lightly with my fingers, do the fibres come up, or are they nice and solid? So I can see that there's still a bit of movement with the fibres. So I go back to rubbing and rolling some fresh warm water, some more soap, rubbing it with my hand, horizontally, vertically, with the dowel, without the dowel. It's very much feel as you go. You're gradually wanting to make a piece of felt that is quite firm and not many loose fibres. Obviously around the edge there are fibres, but we're going to cut them out and use the dense section in the middle. To give you an idea of time, I probably continued this probably for about a good 20 minutes of rolling, rubbing, turning it, flipping it. Sometimes the less fibres you use, the more agitation and time it needs to become a strong piece, because it's much finer. So I'm going to dip it in some fresh water, squeeze the soap out, and I can pat dry it. Sometimes I give it another little rub with water, with a little bit of soap. I'm aiming for a thin piece, so when I cut the petals it's not too bulky. I'm also going to scrunch it up and throw it down on the table, and this helps with the felting and the fulling process. I've sped that up, and now I'm feeling and looking where the best place to cut it is. So I'm cutting off the finer edges on both sides and at the ends. These pieces I'll keep for another project, my offcuts. They can be felted into another project. But I'm basically cutting some small triangles. I feel I can do this just by eye. If you want to draw and measure them precisely, that's obviously okay too. So I'm going to move on to the batting. So batting is different to roving in that the fibres have been carded and they're already crisscrossed. So it makes for a much faster process to wet felt. So I'm just laying it out, trying to make it fairly even, filling in some little holes. You can see the black through some places. And then once again, the mesh is going on top and the hot soapy water is being drizzled over, pressing down gently just to make sure the water and the soap is going all the way through. And then I'll start to give it a gentle rub. So this is going to create the little cone shape in the centre of my jonquil. So as I go and give it a rub, I'll then take the mesh off and I'm going to fold it in half, approximately in half, just to give myself a cleaner top edge. That will help when I create that cone shape for the centre of the jonquil. So once again, giving it a rub, a roll, the pinch test. I'm going to rub the edges here because once you cut the felt, you have raw edges, so I need to seal those edges over again. And I'm going to be cutting out some semicircle shapes, similar to semicircles, but a shape that can easily be curled into a cone shape. It's a little bit fiddly. You can actually cut these slightly bigger so you have a longer piece to work with. So as these pieces have been cut, I'm going to rub them again to make sure the edges are sealed as they can be. Once again, I'll speed up this section for you. Just a quick rub with hot soapy water. And then I'm going to go through the process of giving them all a bit of a rinse in some fresh water. They should stay intact and in their shape for you at this point. I'm going to dry them all off on the towel. Just pressing down on the towel will dry them off suitably. Now, I found the trick here is to make sure all your pieces are dry before you start needle felting them together. It does make it a lot easier if you're working with dry wool rather than trying to needle felt wet wool. So first of all, I'm starting with this cone shape. This is the smaller one, and I'm needle felting the inside and the outside. Once I place it to the side, I take my first of the triangles, I fold it in half and just snip the end in a diagonal. So folding in half, snipping the end. So you end up with little diamond shapes. So I've just sped this part up for you. I've used 6 petals here. Jonquils come in all different varieties. Some have more star-like shaped petals, some are curved and round. So you can experiment with different shapes as you work through your wool. So I'm folding the base of the diamond onto my little cone with the gold felt, and with my needle, again, wait till these are all dry. It's much easier needle felting into dry wool than it is with wet wool. And this part is fiddly, so go slowly. If you have leather tips for your fingers, use these so you don't poke yourself. And I'm just going to go through one at a time, needle felting each one in. So give them a decent poke with the needle so that they're quite secure. We also will be needle felting and wet felting more once we add the stem. So this one is the longer cone, so I cut a bigger circle, and when I cut it in half I had a longer piece to work with, so this might be easier for some people. Once again, you're attaching the diamonds. The wider end you're going to needle felt into the base of your cone. Once all petals are on, you're ready to join your stem. So you're going to take your stem and have the loose section. You're going to place this over the base of your bud, wrapping extra wool around, and you're going to start needle felting this into place. So just take care of your fingers here. You can lean on the foam block to do this. You can also wrap additional wool around the base. Using warm soapy water again, you're now gently squeezing that warm soapy water through the stem, particularly focusing on where you have joined it to your jonquil, and giving gentle rubs, and then you're going to roll it slowly onto the rubber mat, just like so, and you're going to gradually rotate it around so to make sure we're rolling all areas. So it's quite fragile at this point. Even though we've needle felted it in, we still need to carefully wet felt and make that really secure. You can use a combination of rolling with your hands, with the mesh, with the rubber mat, and give it a rinse until it's ready and secure for the next stage. So I've just got a needle and brown thread, poking it straight through the centre, and the needle will come through underneath, somewhere through from your stem, and we're just going to gently pull it through, not all the way, and snipping it off just to make some details. And we're going to put a second one in as well, but you can do as many of these as you like, and you can use whatever colour thread that you choose. If you rub the stem, the thread will become secure within it and you won't see it. And we're just going to place a second one through. You could place a third or a fourth, however many stamen you want to be in the center of your jonquil. As I haven't used any wire for this, I'm just using a small amount of PVA glue and adding a little bit of water, and I'm going to squeeze it into the petals, which will just give it a little bit of firmness and strength, as I'm going to be using as a bookmark. You can also use this to help shape your petals if you'd like. So this will dry clear, it doesn't damage the wool, and it will just be a bit more robust when you're using it each day when you read your book. I hope you enjoy your jonquil bookmark.